But first, the second of a two-part look at the declining life expectancy for some middle-aged white Americans. Last week, economics correspondent Paul Salmon examined the role prescription painkillers and alcohol may play in the trend. Tonight, he explores how the economy and the job market may be involved. It's part of our weekly series, Making Sense, which airs Thursdays.
The Hardys in Maysville, Kentucky, a popular hangout for the senior set. Martin Sauer used to work for the sheriff's department, where he says he saw his share of Saturday night drunks, but nothing like the current opioid drug epidemic.
People get hooked on it and can't get off of it or don't want to. It's causing a lot of the younger generation to lose their lives.
And by younger generation, Sauer means his middle-aged neighbors, who, as we reported last week, are experiencing a stunning rise in premature deaths due to alcoholism, suicide, and drug abuse. But why?
The health crisis here is particularly among the white working class, or white people with a high school and no more. For those people, the economy has been very hard for a very long time.
Predictably, Angus Deaton and Ann Case, economists who have documented the dramatic decrease in life expectancy, say an obvious place to look for a cause is the economy.
It used to be with a high school degree, you could get a job that actually could provide for your family. Yeah. And the disappearance of those may lead people to feel a lot more stressed.
Indeed, in the period covered by their study, 1999 to 2014, inflation-adjusted income for households headed by a high school graduate fell by 19%. Well away from the ivory tower, on the ground in Maysville, Wayne Pendleton has lived the change.
Maysville, when we moved here, was a pretty well flourishing little town right here. But we've lived here, 17 years, and you can just name the stuff that's left here. You can't take a job away from a guy 55 years old and expect him to start all over again.
Even at my age, it's depressing if you're not trying to do something.
Despite 4 heart attacks, Sherman Saunders still wants to work.
That's not somebody else's responsibility. Take care of the family. It's supposed to be yours. Get out and go to work and do that yourself.
Most of the men aren't working.
Marcy Connor, a nurse specializing in substance abuse, has a close-up view of the downward spiral.
All of a sudden, you lose your job. So here is a male with no identity. He's not working. He's supposed to be a provider for his family. He can't even do that. So that low self-worth, along with that hopelessness feeling, we start seeing tremendous depression. So how do you relieve depression? You can relieve it with drug use, alcohol use, or suicide.
Connor's own husband died of alcohol poisoning.
Poured alcohol down his feeding tube until he died.
The husband of best friend Becky Manning also killed himself.
He blew his head off.
Joseph Manning had been a truck driver for 30 years.
And then he retired at 55, which then gave him nothing to do. Then he started getting depressed, and then we would go to different doctors, and then they would just try different drugs, and those never worked because they caused side effects, which made him feel worse about himself.
Weight gain.
Yes, he gained weight.
Libido.
Absolutely. Where I'm worthless. I can't be here for my wife.
So when you hear about the end of work, the jobs like truck driver jobs, which
Right.
will be replaced by
Absolutely.
self-driving cars, you think,
What are these men going to do? Yeah.
In this next generation, I think you're going to see the death rate continue to climb.
Nice deep breath.
local Dr. Craig Denham buys into the economic hypothesis.
Economics is a major component. Job availability is a major component.
So, case closed. Economics explains the epidemic of suicide and overdose deaths ravaging America's white working class. Not so fast, say Case and Deaton.
Because Europeans have suffered too in this, the jobs leaving the country, but we don't see them killing themselves.
Yeah, Spain suffered. The unemployment rate went from 5% to like 25%, and the health improved.
And what about working class black Americans?
African Americans' rates of deaths from suicide, drug overdose, and alcohol have been flat. They have not risen.
It's not as if stress is something new to the Black American population. We've been dealing with stress for quite a long time.
Economist Derek Hamilton.
The impact of stress is not new, so that's why you're probably not seeing an uptick in the way it is for whites. We're used to struggle, unfortunately.
And also there's this argument on the other side that, you know, whites have been ahead for so long that when they see their world coming apart, even though they're still doing much better than blacks, then they see equalization as oppression.
The group that they studied is one that has, by almost every concrete measure, been falling behind in recent decades.
Economist Bob Frank has devoted much of his career to the study of inequality.
Life is graded on the curve. It's not how well you do in absolute terms, it's how well you do relative to your competitors.
Or relative to your own past.
And if you're in a chronic loser position, I think that's a position that just wears people down eventually.
Psychologically and physiologically, as low status is linked to decreased serotonin in the brain, which can cause dysphoria, a state of intense unease and distress.
If you're exposed to having low status in a chronic way and experiencing protracted feelings of dysphoria, it's not surprising that many people would turn to drink and drugs as a way to alleviate such feelings.
In fact, according to a recent study by economist Alan Kruger, middle-aged men who've dropped out of the labor force report notably low levels of emotional well-being, and more than half take pain medication every day.
And so if you suffer enough and your kids are not doing very well, and you know the world's going to hell in a handbasket, then suicide either directly or through painkillers or alcohol might seem like a not completely crazy thing to do.
There is, we should acknowledge, another take on the rise in so-called deaths of despair.
I don't buy into the everything fell apart, so now I can't do nothing. I still believe in the American dream.
Anthony Flannery, who works long hours in healthcare and on funding his dream of making music full-time, doesn't dispute the data. He just doesn't think they provide an excuse or even much of an explanation.
So people that lay around and give up, I don't relate to it. It's like, okay, I can understand getting knocked down. And now I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. I get that. I've been there countless times. But you have to get focused, pick yourself up, find a direction, and make it happen in your life and for your family.
But if the problem is a decline in moral fiber, what would explain that? Too easy access to remedies that seem to cure all problems until they become the problem themselves? Or longer term, the deteriorating economics of white working-age America relative to any and all expectations? For the PBS NewsHour, economics correspondent Paul Salman, reporting from Kentucky.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 7. And Yahweh thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of Yahweh and do all the commandments which I command thee this day. And you can see that happening right now. Seems like a new video every week on how Esau is killing himself, whether it's with drugs or just committing suicide, because of the decline of the American society, which the Lord is going to completely destroy it. So in slavery, they're going to try to really kill themselves. We're going to have to bring their ass back into that hell just so they can enjoy every bit of the hell that we put on them. But, this is still great news. Esau is starting to feel the curses come upon them, and that's all the reason why I made this video. Until next time, Shalom, Akim.